Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Liam, the first chapter by CIRCUS MAXIMUS, audio version if possible. So that's what we're going to check out today. A little bit of disclaimer, I am familiar-ish with this song. I discovered this album late 2000s maybe. Oh, it came out in 05? Yeah, I mean, probably like 07, 08, 09 probably. I know I was in college when I discovered it. I remember listening to the album a couple of times. This is the song that stuck out to me though. It's been over a decade though, and the only thing that I really remember about it is a very orchestral opening that for some reason what I have tied to it is it reminds me of Star Wars. I don't know what that means. I don't know I have Star Wars associated with the intro of this track. I guess we're going to find out in a second. It'll be nice to revisit it though. It's been a long time since I've listened to CIRCUS MAXIMUS. So, we do have some prog rock ahead of us. Let's kick it, see what's going on. Okay, I kind of Imperial March-ish. I wonder if that's what I thought. I like the little embellishing ideas. Yeah, this is very cool. Oh, cut that short. Extended that? Oh, I said progressive rock, but this is metallic. Okay, that's a fun double time. Oh, that drum fill. Oh, that one's so much better. That's tense. The half-step rise. That's the first time we have a choir, right? We didn't have any of that in the orchestral opening. Lots of pedal tone riding though to make room for everything else going on. Ho 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 ho! So I don't think I had the vocabulary for this, but it's very djenty. I would never have described this back as djent when I first discovered it.
The journey begins beyond the mountains far away, where the sun always shines and the rainbows begin. The grand utopia, a young man in his pride, restless heart and
Okay, yeah.
soul, leaving his loved ones
So we're looking at a 17-beat phrase, a bar of 4, and then 5, and then 4, and then 4. It's interesting though, moving away from that djenty stuff into Dream Theater-esque stuff.
He feels the absence of well-being as he leaves his roots behind, wandering night and day without any rest. Voices from inside that I cannot understand, calling me to go somewhere. Road he once knew shakes before his
There's so many cool things going on. The vocal delivery, the guitar riffs. Ooh. The drum work's great.
Now it's too late.
Dang. It's a long way to work on that microtonal fall. Interesting guitar tone. So that part seemed odd, but I counted 4/4 in it. The harmony on that Resurrected, I think he said. Kind of strip things back, just chords here. We do have acoustic guitar tones on. Back to the intro. We had acoustic guitar sounds on the outside. So this is cool because the last time we heard any of these orchestral parts, they were not accompanied by the metal instrumentation. Oh, so that was like really heavy, bit dark. This is uplifting, possibility, maybe hope. Shifting to the constant eighth notes on the bass kick. Something about that works really well here. I think it's the palm muted staccato guitar stuff to go along with it. There are bits and flashes, little triggerings of my memory. I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this part. I don't remember this little piano interlude at all, though. Drastic change of pace, too. But gorgeous.
I wander through the sands.
The vocals are very forward
For
here.
quite some time now, for days. Where I'm going, I don't know. It's hard to breathe, the heat burns my skin.
The reverb is an interesting touch to
someone's watching over me. My faith is in their hands.
Ooh, real spacey.
Voices surrounds me. They show me the way. I reached the point of no return. The path that lies behind me, I will never see again. From the day that I left home, I had nothing on my mind. I hear laughter in the sand. Feels like someone watching over me. My faith is in their hands. Voices surround me. They show me the way.
Dude, this is wild. Because I'm pretty sure Periphery did a very similar thing, like 5 years later, 6 years later, on their Juggernaut album. We gotta ramp it back up. Yeah. I don't know where we're going, but we gotta come back up. That's a wah pedal with like a lot of distortion or something, right? That is a wicked tone. Yeah, and the drums introducing this triplet feel on the ride cymbal before the guitars leaned into it. This is bringing back the 4-5-4-4 from earlier, the alternating 9 and 8. And that used the first 2 bars of the intro of the song, the orchestral section, to introduce this new section. I don't know if it was super smooth, but using that like a callback transition, I'll give him credit for it. That was Oh, the drummer switching from backbeat to front of the beat. Oh, yeah. The secondary vocals pushed way out to the sides is wild. Dude, that's a very tense melodic midpoint. Dude, this drummer's wild. Ooh, that was rough. That cymbal work though. Oh dang, that was fun. So much China. Bringing back this melody. Okay. And we doing a double time again? Oh, going big. The opposite. Those very abrupt harmonic shifts are bonkers. Very theatrical. There's still a minute and a half left, though. This ends the album, right? Yeah, this is the final track on the album. Oh, there is something back here, though. Is it detuning? No. Yes? No. I think it's just emulating older hardware. Okay, so I have no idea how to interpret that final 2 minute stint. But my initial gut reaction was maybe it has something to do with the whole album. Maybe that's a good way to wrap the album up. It just doesn't make a lot of sense here. But then it just dawned on me. I've never looked into the words on this, into the lyrics. Even in that just reaction right here. Like I mentioned, some things were triggering memories. I'm like, oh, okay, I vaguely remember parts of this. The whole structure of it, no, no. Around every corner, I was a bit excited to see what came next. But there were a couple sections I was like, oh yeah, that one. Okay, I don't remember that ending at all. But I have none of that with the lyrics. When I go check out lyrics at the end of this video, that'll be the first time I've ever read them. But this was fun. This was fun. I mean, first of all, even when we've checked out songs that I've heard hundreds of times on this channel, it's still cool to check them out with a critical ear. I don't usually do this for casual listening. I use my critical ear mostly when I'm trying to learn something from music or engage with it past the surface level listening, which is usually for, again, a moment to teach myself. If I hear something and I'm like, ooh, why does that sound so good? I might investigate that. But for the most part, my critical listening is something I've used for academia and now this channel. It's just, it doesn't come into my casual listening much at all. And like I said, even for songs that I've heard hundreds of times, I'll check them out this way and it'll be like listening to it with a fresh pair of ears. It's just really cool. And there's a lot of stuff that I picked up here that I didn't know was in there. Little callbacks and tidbits, transitional ideas. I don't even think I've ever counted this track out before. I knew it had odd time signatures, but it was more of I've just listened to it for so many times that I feel them out. But here, I hear something odd. I'm like, ooh, what is the time signature here? What are they doing? And so, even if I was more familiar with this, even if I had checked it out recently, or I've heard it more than, a handful of times, I still think I would have learned something new today. But I did learn a lot of new stuff today. Let's dig into this. Because there's so much to talk about, and the video's already 20 minutes in because this is a pretty long track. And it is the longest one on the album. If you listen to this and you're like, yes, I want more of that. Most of their songs are in the 5 to 6 minute range. And I don't remember a lot of orchestral stuff being on them. So if you were here for the structure and all the twists and turns and the use of the horns on this, I mean, maybe someone more knowledgeable can give a more defined answer, but at least to my knowledge, this was like the only song that did that. This one always stood out to me among the rest of the tracks on this album, but I could be wrong. Again, it's been at least 15 years since I've listened to it. And honestly, I don't remember any of the other tracks. Track 1, Sin. I bet if I turned it on and listened to like the first couple of seconds, it'd start to click with me. But the rest of the tracks, no, I don't want to say they were forgettable, but they did not stick with me like track 1 and track 8, this last one, the first chapter, did. And I think that's just like Sin is the one, the track 1's the one you always listen to first on an album, and this one is just that big of a deviation that it's just surprising. It's going to stick with you, especially as what was probably a early 20s, maybe a late teens, never hearing anything like this in my life. Hearing that classical music that I've been playing on trumpet brought up into the world of metal, which I was, kind of getting into a little bit. I had, hair metal, and a little bit of prog metal in my childhood. I knew who like Queensryche were, and I think I knew of Dream Theater. I think Metropolis Part Two or something had come out recently, or something like that. One of my friends was obsessed with that. I think I listened to one of the Metropolis tracks or something, but like I wasn't a big Dream Theater fan. This kind of stuff I just never heard of before. It was wild to just see the smashing together. So that's probably why it stuck with me. It's very formative. Um, but yeah, let's get into some analysis here. Less about me, more about the music. So, we kick it off with a fairly lengthy, cohesive bit of playing. And what I'm talking about here is like the first 9 minutes, almost halfway into the song, right before we hit the piano solo. I think at that point, the song fragments quite a bit and goes in a bunch of different directions. But for the most part, this first 9.5 minutes or so is very cohesive. Ideas are constantly expanded upon, layered upon it one another, tons of foreshadowing, calling back to ideas. It's a great way of interweaving much of the song into each other to create what is certainly a very diverse set of sounds. The orchestral opening into that sort of djenty rhythm about 3 minutes in, going into that full metallic sound, but eventually interweaving many of these lines, bringing that djenty guitar groove and bass kick groove underneath. One of the melody lines from the brass, I think. And I think even bringing back that staccato line, that da 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 da, that came back in as like a transition or something. Like there's just a lot of interweaving of these two sections that were separated pretty clearly at the beginning of the track. And it took something that introduced a very harsh transition coming out of that orchestral section into that first guitar riff. I mean, that's just a drastic change in harmony, chord progression, key, instrumental sound, timbre, and then slowly interweaving those parts together and merging the two sounds. Once we hit minute 9.5, the piano ballad section comes in. I feel like the song does a lot of twists and turns and is less interested in being cohesive at that point. We'll explore that later. But I do think that the song sort of sits in these two halves, and I kind of enjoy the first half more, even if the back half had some really cool twists and turns. Like in isolation, many of these ideas were pretty awesome. It didn't flow into a larger idea like the first half did for me. But we do kick the song off with some crazy cool orchestral stuff. Um, and yeah, like Imperial March, I can kind of hear why I had like a Star Wars thing tied to this. I don't know if I'd make that comparison right now. Like if that wasn't in my memory, I don't know if I would have brought that up. But there is something about we get that bass kick and the tuba maybe boom 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 bum 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 bum, and then that's when the staccato hits come in on everything else. Like that section right there, sort of the sparseness. We just have the bass line. We just have those quick staccato runs, the groups of three. But then on the outside, there's like glockenspiel or something just kind of shimmering on the outside. I don't know. Everything about this feels very spacey and militaristic. Part of it's just that staccato idea, but the consistent beat in the background feels very marchy. And maybe all those things combined made me think of Star Wars. Because other than that, I don't know that there's a lot that goes. Like I said, it's not a comparison I think I'd make today, but it's something that's just stuck in my mind from teenage me. Um, but yeah, this whole section, I mean, just the orchestral flourish, the chord progression, the instrumental movement, the interworking of all these layers. I think that's the thing that really stands out to me. If you can write metal music, I think you can write a type of classical music or a type of orchestral music. You just take that same type of writing that you do for metal instruments, and then you just give it to some orchestral instruments. I think it's the reason why string quartet plays popular metal song is sort of a popular cover style, because the translation of sounds, the timbres of the electric instruments, distorted and all that, kind of transposes onto bowed instruments rather well. And I think vice versa. That's also why it's really easy to incorporate string instruments into metal. Um, But that's not what happens here. We're not playing metal music with this different set of instruments. This is straight up. I don't know what to call it. I suppose contemporary classical, modern classical certainly fits the bill, but there's also an element to it. See, this is where it kind of gets interesting for me. Some of it some of it feels very film score-ish. But there's so many moving parts too, and a lot of things that draw attention to themselves. I'm like, no, this would never work as film score. This is definitely a song that demands you listen to it by itself, which brings me into like contemporary classical. Regardless what the classification would be, it's got depth, even if it isn't as deep as, some of the best classical composers out there would write. Um, it has more depth than I would expect from your average metal group. I don't know if Circus Maximus is an average group. Maybe there's a maybe maybe one of the people in it is like he's got a degree in music composition or something, and he writes symphonies in his spare time or something. I don't know. What I do know though is that this opening is deeper than I would expect. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of uh tertiary parts, even, where we would have some foundational instruments, a melody or two. There's some counterpoint going on in here, and while that's going on, we'll have other instruments kind of shaping in ideas too, where maybe this melody will be going on, and at the end of it, it'll kind of slow down a little bit and be like boom, 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 and then there'll be another tuba that kind of comes in under and kind of scoops under that final note and provides a little bit of flourish to that, maybe with like a grace note or something. And it's so many little sections like that. Oh, I don't want to throw shade at rock and metal, but those genres, and honestly, aside from like electronic music in general, but a lot of modern music these days are very focused on three core things: your rhythm, your chord progression, and the melody. And that's really it. It's sort of what makes my job so easy up here. Is that a vast majority of music is going to be easily quantified in those three realms. What makes analyzing classical music or jazz music, or anytime you guys give me some crazy prog rock and prog metal like this, is that embellishing ideas, tertiary ideas. These things aren't used too much in music, and it's more stuff to listen to, more stuff to figure out what's going on, and that's exactly what's happening here. This feels like traditional classical music, and I love that about it. It understands contrast. It understands dynamics. There's uh, time changes throughout here. Well, tempo changes, I should say more specifically. But it's also the way that the instruments are used. It's not just about layering up melodies or layering up rhythms. It's also about little ornamental ideas, little flourishing concepts. I mean, honestly, like, if you go back and listen to this again, I urge you to find the lead melody, what the song is putting in the spotlight, what you would normally be listening to if you were just like brain off, just absorbing the music and feeling it out, and specifically listen for any other instruments other than that one. I guarantee you there's so many other moving parts going on here. I can't even name them all. And I think that's what keeps me engaged in this opening. Yeah, the melodies are excellent. The ideas are fun. They got bite to them. There's a darkness to a lot of it. It captures a very specific mood and atmosphere that I think blends into that metallic side that they lean into right off the bat. It all works in the concept, in the scope of the song, but I think it also works if you just take that opening 2.5 minute orchestral bit. There's still even a lot to learn about compositional devices and how to write for a larger group of instruments just within that. And in fact, I kind of want to break it down now. If anybody has the sheet music to it, if Circus Maximus has released like an official tab book, or, well, honestly, sheet music, I would not want to read tabs for this. Um, but I'd take anything at this point. Just, I don't know why this kind of curiosity never hit me 15 years ago, but like, I need to know now. I'd love to dig into that see what all's going on. And that's just like the first 2.5 minutes of the song. Like I've talked about this for quite some time now. And it's really impressive to me. And it shouldn't be, because I shouldn't like put down metal uh, performers like this. But again, it's like listening to somebody who growls for a long time and then they bust out like super beautiful cleans. And like, I shouldn't be surprised by that. I've seen that so many times, but it still does surprise me that somebody doing these gnarly metal vocals can have like a really great classically trained voice too. Even if it's not even if it's not academically classically trained, even if it's self-taught, to still have a very powerful clean. In the same way like this, man, when I listen to metal, I kind of expect what metal does. And to bust out something like this surprises me. It is a little bit against the grain, against the norm of what metal musicians write, but it's not like this is the first time I've heard some complex composition from a metal group either. I wonder if it's one of those biases I'm just never going to be able to get over. I'll be like 80 and still surprised when metal groups bust out stuff that's a bit more, dexterous or complexly layered, or just, a growler with a beautiful voice. I don't know. But yeah, the opening 3 minutes of the song is just fantastic. After this, we enter to the djent section of the song, which again, like I said in the reaction, I would never have used that term back when I was listening to this. I didn't know what djent was. I didn't discover Periphery for at least 2 to 3 years after I heard this album. And I think that was my introduction to djent, and I don't even know if I heard that phrase tossed around with that band. Maybe I did. But that's exactly what this is. It kind of makes me think they're ahead of their time. 205. I'm trying to think of like when Meshuggah was really getting popular, and I don't know. For me to listen to these riffs though and think, wow, these pedal tone riffs with oddly syncopated ideas, and that's the djent thing right there. To create basically sitting on one note, although sometimes djent can use two. And mostly focusing on the rhythm and the texture, and using very odd rhythmic devices to kind of keep the listener on their toes with heavy use of syncopation and irregular patterns. So maybe you have a group of 3 notes, and then a rest that would take up 2 of those notes, and then a group of 4, and then a rest that takes up 1, and then maybe 2 hits, and then a rest of 3. It's irregular. It's difficult to follow, but it keeps the groove somehow, usually with some sort of backbeat. In this band, you can usually listen for the cymbal to give you some sort of quarter note or eighth note strike to give you that feeling of the core pulse of the song. This feels like it'd be right at home today, though. It feels like a 2010s, 2020s riff, something you'd hear in a modern metalcore breakdown, and it was here in a 2005 album. When did this come out? 2005? May. So they were writing this in 04 probably, writing and recording. Late 04. That just doesn't feel like what I think of. Although, to be fair, at the time, I was mostly listening to radio rock and new metal, so I don't actually know what the metal scene was looking like at that time. But again, it just feels a decade early, half a decade early to me. Any of you metal historians out there who know a lot of history of metal and the changes across time and eras, let me know if this feels forward thinking, because it does for me. It surprises me to see the 05 release on this. But yeah, we have this very djenty syncopated rhythm come in. The bass kick follows along with it, and then they provide us a backbeat elsewhere. There's quite a few flip arounds with this. I don't know any other way to describe that. The drummer is absolutely bonkers on this. Granted, there's a lot of fills in here that sound really great too, and those are definitely worth pointing out at times. But to me, where the drummer really excels is taking an idea and then subverting it or changing it or pushing against it while the rest of the band is continuing to do that idea. We see this actually right here at the beginning. There's a section where the horns come in on top of this Djenty guitar groove, and the drummer's throwing down a pretty standard tempo and idea. And then we enter into that punkier double time feel. Wild stuff. Like there's no call for that. There's no need for it. The drummer did it anyways. It's kind of jarring, but it ends up working well. And that's why toward the end of the song, when we revisited this exact idea, I asked, are we going to go for the double time? And instead, the drummer went for the half time. Again, subverting my expectations that they themselves set up. At least the first time, they were kind of working within tropes that way. But here, they're like, you've heard this section before, and we're going to do it different now. But there's also plenty of times where the drummer will emphasize like beats 1 and 3 on the snare for 4 bars, for 8 bars, and then out of nowhere begin to emphasize 2 and 4 instead, just completely subverting where the groove is on the beat or on the bar. And these sections are really bonkers to me. They drastically change the feeling of these sections, and it kind of makes it difficult to follow along with the groove of these tracks, but it ends up working. There's something, I'd say, charismatic about it. Maybe it's just the, I don't know, the I don't, what would you call it? Just getting in there and doing it, not caring about what it sounds like, just the full passion behind it. I don't know. It's very jarring every time it happens, but it always put a dumb smile on my face, like, oh yeah, there the drummer goes again, just messing with the time feel. And he does it all over the song. Whether it's things that make a bit more sense with the groove, like I said, double time, half time still have the same emphasis. We just do it more often or less often, or completely subverting it. There's even one time when we were working with every other beat. I don't remember if it was 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. And then just out of nowhere starts introducing some triplet stuff. It's just like, okay, dude, whatever you want to do at this point. And it's just, anytime I listen to the drums, I think I made this comment so many times, like, that's just a fun idea. Does it necessarily make sense? Does it keep the groove? Is he doing his job as a human metronome? Yeah, in a sense. He just changes up the beat of the metronome so often that it's kind of difficult to follow along with. But that's what makes it fun. The rest of the band, they're just doing their thing. And the drummer's like, nah, I'm gonna change it up like every couple of seconds. And it's kind of endearing, I think. Oh, also, dude, his ride cymbal stuff, his cymbal patterns in general, the rhythms he throws on them, the syncopation, just every time, man. You hear that ride cymbal start to flare up, you're like, this dude's gonna go crazy. I love it. Very cool stuff. Now, once we get into the metal section of it, I feel like it gets into a very rule of cool sound. There's some great riffs in here. There's a lot of breakdown style Djenty grooves going on. Sometimes the groove itself is the key. Other times it makes space for other ideas. There's parts where other instrumentation, such as the brass, come in and fill in the space. Sometimes with parts that feel like they're ripped right out of the opening. Sometimes it's brand new melodies. But I feel like anytime the vocals come in, we kind of shift to a more heavy metal style. It kind of, I mean, it's Dream Theater-esque at a lot of points in this. And I think a lot of that comes down to a shift in riff style. This song seems to be split between an older style of metal and a more modern style of metal. I don't always know that the schism there works. It often feels like the song flip-flops, but it's not just how the riffs are written, but also the keys that the riffs are written in. There's a very large divide between the heavier rule of cool riffs and the lighter heavy metal riffs. And it's not just, again, the riff style, but also the notes chosen. Pretty much any time that the vocalist is singing, the music tends to be a bit lighter. When the vocalist leaves, we can get into that meatier, darker guitar tone with a heavier focus on darker harmonies. And it feels kind of jarring at times. I think that those transitions, especially since pretty much everything in here was a harsh transition, those are the moments that kind of took me out for a moment and had me like kind of thinking like, oh, that was awkward. Maybe awkward's the wrong word. Maybe the more I listen to it, the two sides form together a little bit better. I can understand the song a bit, but it really does feel like there's two sides to this. And when we bring in the opening and it also having a different key to it, the song just feels very split, never really knowing what it wants to do, at least in the whole. Moment to moment, the song is very cohesive. Every section feels great. Every section has great ideas. The riffs are cool. The melodies are excellent. The drum patterns are whatever they are. Usually bonkers, but fun to listen to. And if there is any expanded instrumentation, it works within the metallic framing very well. But when I think of the song as a whole, I mean, I think Rule of Cool captures it. What do you want to do next? Well, I got this riff. It sounds pretty awesome. All right, let's do it. No wondering if it's really going to match where we just were, if it's going to help us to go somewhere. It just sounds cool. So let's do it. I have no idea if that's the process that they have for forming a song of this structure and length, but that's what it feels like to me. Regardless, I think you could tell from the look on my face and the fact that I really enjoyed this opening 9 minutes. I don't really have that big of a problem with it, at least here. And there's enough tie over between ideas that I can kind of feel everything semi connected. However, this novelty began to wear on me a little bit. And I think the part where it really struck was minute 9.5 or so when the ballad begins. This piano part comes out of nowhere. It's a completely different atmosphere and emotion and key. And it just doesn't really fit at all. It feels like a totally different song. And we're in here for like 2 or 3 minutes or so. We begin to expand the instrumentation on it. We bring in some guitars, we bring in the drums and the bass. It's an excellent ballad. I think as a standalone song, I'd really enjoy it. Its placement in this track makes no sense to me. There's nothing that foreshadows it, nothing that leads into it, and once we leave it, we never return to any of these ideas, harmonically, rhythmically, or melodically, really again. I feel like the vocal melody comes back towards the end of the track in a heavier section, but I think that's the only callback to it. And even then, I might be wrong about it. I mean, I'm talking about 20 minutes worth of music here. I'm not going to remember everything perfectly. But at least we returned to something like it. It was more legato than everything else that we kind of saw and had less of that metal edge as far as the vocal melody is concerned. So even if it wasn't the same idea, it was in a similar vein. But after this point, nothing seems to make sense. The ballad comes out of nowhere, doesn't go into anything, and the sections seem to get shorter and the jumps are even wider. What we were playing to what we were playing next is just, how did we get there? Why are we here? And a lot of it is just reusing old ideas, which is a double-edged sword. And I know some of you all might even be at your keyboards already. Dude, you always talk about callbacks and foreshadowing. This is what they're doing. Like, yes, I enjoy the idea of motif, of bringing ideas back in new context. And to be honest, when I pointed out many of the callbacks here, I was like, oh, this comes from that one. There's energy, there's excitement in my voice. I'm happy to hear this. I just don't always know that it works. And subjectively, because kind of in a lot of ways, this is my first time listening to it, I don't understand it. I've always kind of enjoyed this song on a sort of base level. But now that I'm digging into the nitty gritty of it, there's a lot of random ideas in here. And I don't necessarily see how one idea moves to the next. And I think that's my problem with the back half is more so than the first half. This one is filled with really great ideas, moments, things I can point to and say, I liked that. Not I like that within the context, not that changes my appreciation for the song. I like that. That 30 seconds was cool. And I don't know how I feel about that yet. I'm trying to be more positive about what I kind of deem as randomness in songs, harsh transitions in general, rapidly moving between ideas. I've been pretty negative about them in the past, and I think at a certain point I've sort of flanderized myself here and kind of hammer home on this concept more than I ever did originally. I mean, it's still not something I enjoy. It's not like I'm making this up or pretending or anything, but I feel like I hammer home on this more often than I should. But in a track like this, I feel lost towards the end of the song. Smile on my face. I'm enjoying myself generally, but it's more of a, you know what it is? I don't think that the end of this song is greater than the sum of its parts. Each part is pretty cool on its own, but it doesn't add up into something great. And I think that's ultimately where I sit on it. I do like the callbacks. I do like the drum fills. I do like the riffs in here. I like the groovy sections. Even towards like 14, 15 minutes into the song, there were still sections that gave me wild stank face because they just entered into the gnarliest, grooviest section with some disgusting guitar tone or something. Like it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't really make much sense, but that contrast makes it have punch. That works. I'm enjoying myself, but is this something I would want to listen to again? I don't know. It's kind of strange. I think this is the first thing that we've really listened to on the channel that I'm familiar with, that I have heard prior to starting the channel, that isn't something that I've loved and have heard millions of times. This is something that I listened to a handful of times and then never put the CD in again. And now I'm listening to it again and kind of having these mixed feelings where, yes, this was fantastic. I love so many parts of it, but I'm also not wanting to check it out again. I do want to check out the rest of Circus Maximus's discography, though. I mean, they've had a few. Looks like 5, maybe. Oh, 4, it looks like. Their 5th one is a live version of their 3rd. I'd like to see where they went from this, because this is a fantastic start. And a lot of the problems I have are things that can be corrected or altered. I don't want to say fixed. Even corrected, I think, is a bit harsh because it's still a subjective thing on the structure of the song. But it's things that I think would get changed with experience. But I don't know if I'd want to listen to this track again. Let me hit some lyrics. See what's going on there. Alright, this is interesting. It starts off, says the journey begins beyond the mountains far away, where the sun always shines and the rainbow begins, the grand utopia. A young man in his pride, his restless heart and soul leaving his loved ones behind, to explore the great unknown alone, all by himself. That is what alone means. Bit redundant there. So we start off with a narration that far, far away is a great utopia, and a young man decides to leave it in order to, I don't know. Maybe this is explained elsewhere on the story, but I mean in the album, but this song feels rather contained. So if it is a concept album, I don't really know where it fits into everything else. This seems very isolated as a story. He says he feels the absence of well-being as he leaves his roots behind, wandering night and day without any rest. Voices from inside that I cannot understand, calling me to go somewhere. This is the first part that I'm not too keen on. One of the staples of storytelling is retaining the perspective of the story. We have 7 or 8 lines that speak about things in the third person. It talks about a young man, says he feels the absence of well-being and that he's exploring the great unknown by himself. After these 8 lines are over, it says, voices from inside that I cannot understand. So the narrator can't understand them? The very next line, though, the road he once knew changes before his wary eyes, going back to third person. One stanza later, I thought it was over now, but the chapter of my life has just begun. I can now see the gates that bring me to eternity. I'm on my own now. I wandered through the sands. Where am I going? We have shifted to first person completely. And by the end of the song, it says that I've reached my destination. My journey is over. So I kind of thought that this was going to be one of those tales where, it's framed like telling a story to some people, but it's actually going to be like at the end, and that was my story, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm the way that I am, kind of thing. But it jumps back and forth between first and third so often in the beginning of the track that I don't know how to follow that. And I know that's like a real small nitpick, and maybe some of you don't care about that, but I do. I like consistency in my writing. I like clarity in my writing. And seeing as this is written like a story, I'm going to approach it a little bit more harsher than if it was just like a straight up, a poem or something. Anyways, so this person ventures out on their own, and they can feel their safety being stripped away. They were in utopia, now they're in a more dangerous world. He says that sunlight is now gone and darkness prevails. The ground begins to shake, and now it's too late. I step into the darkness. You are now our soul to keep. I'm falling into the burning skies. I thought it was over, but the chapter of my life has just begun, restructured to complete the task that's been brought on to me. I can now see the gates that bring me to eternity, but I'm on my own now. So, ventures out, walks into darkness, falls for a long time, and has his soul taken over by demons, perhaps? It doesn't really state, but I mean, in most mythologies, what tends to keep people's souls? That's where my mind went on it. The next stanza talks about wandering through the sand, saying that it was hard to breathe, that the heat burns their skin, but they feel like someone's watching over them. This is a chorus that shows up quite often. It says like, feel like someone's watching over me, my faith is in their hands, voices surround me, and they show me the way. This, I think, is supposed to tie back into that line earlier, voices from inside that I cannot understand. Now they're beginning to understand them after having gone through some trials and tribulations in this darkness. The next stanza says that they've reached a point of no return, that the path that lies behind them is one they will never see again. Keep that in mind. I think metaphorically that works. Literally it doesn't. We'll get to that though. It says, from the day I left home, I had one thing on my mind, to find the hidden answer in the sand. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of allusions to deserts and sands here. There's a lot of talk about finding answers and needing this one big thing, and they never talk about what it is. Maybe it's just supposed to be a random MacGuffin. It's about the journey, not the destination. It doesn't help me empathize with our narrator, with our main character, if I don't understand what they want. I don't get the reason that they're doing all of this, their intentions, their goals, other than just the vague thing of they're looking for something, and that's not very engaging on a reader to character level. It says a beast stands before them. If this challenge is won, maybe my faith is sealed. The fight lasts for days, and evil will embrace the one who enters the gate, judged to live in pain and forever suffer for eternity. The beast lies before me. I have won. I've defeated the beast. The path before me, now it is revealed, and the answer is in the sand. Now, here's where things start to fall apart. We only have 3 stanzas left. The answer here in the sand is just faith. Maybe it's the concept of faith. Maybe it's the word faith. It says, my faith failed long ago, but I must still carry on. The secret lies right in front of me and before my eyes, the book that brought me to hell. And then the final stanza is, the journey ends back to paradise. Beyond the mountains far away, I've returned to where the sun always shines, to my grand utopia. Which seems that unless somehow he decided to traverse the entire rest of whatever this world is, that he would have had to walk back the path he came in order to get back home. Which is why I said that the line about looking back at the path behind you and realizing you'll never see it again feels awkward. I get the metaphorical elements of it. The literal one doesn't quite work as well. But this whole thing is that he put himself in danger, fought beasts, battled demons, possibly went to a hell of sorts to find the word faith in the sand, and that was enough for him to go back home in utopia. I don't know about this one. It feels like there's a lot of details missing. There is a lot of repetition and redundancy in here. I think there's a lot of room that we could have put more details in that would have helped me engage a little bit more with the material, I think. The chorus, which says, I feel like someone's watching over me. My faith is in their hands. Voices surround me and they show me the way. That pops up like 5 times. And there's only 15 stanzas in here for a 19-minute song. The musical storytelling is excellent-ish, and maybe having these lyrics paired with the music and feeling where they come in and what kind of emotions there are and what comes out of that, where we go musically, maybe that fills in some of the blanks. But just looking at it on paper and reading it like a poem, it is woefully underwritten in a lot of ways. And I don't connect with it on any level. Like, there's a part of it that I'm like, okay, the metaphor is about losing your faith in whatever that might be. They don't even talk about what kind of faith this is. Is this faith in humanity? Faith in the utopia? Is this faith in religion? Is this faith in a god? It doesn't say. But, he had an issue. He went out, battled some demons, presumably grew from it. He went from a life of utopia. I assume that nothing ever bad happened. And now he has overcome true obstacles and has grown and went back home. But 1, it doesn't really show how he grew at all, where the growth lies. And 2, he's going back to utopia, so the growth kind of doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things. It kind of feels singular, isolated, a lone person's tale, but the music is epic and bombastic. It feels larger than life, but the story is not. I don't know. It's just, I'm going to try not to let it influence much, but I think I liked the music without knowing what the lyrics were. I'm not going to say it ruined the song, but there's so much to me that I just don't enjoy about the lyrics here. So, those are my thoughts. Circus Maximus, the first chapter. If you're still here an hour in, thank you. I appreciate it. Also, go ahead and let me know what you thought of this. If you enjoyed it, if there's anything that stood out to you, if there's something you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on. I know I had some criticisms for this that honestly I didn't think I would. I just remember this being a cool song. And there was a lot of cool stuff in here too, but I had some criticisms for it. If you think I'm wrong on any of it, if you have your own interpretation or opinion on any of this, please put all that down in the comment section. I'm really eager to see what other people think of this track. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.